The cafe went dead silent the moment she laughed at him. Lucas Hale, worth $3 billion, sat frozen as his blind date mocked his thrift store jacket and walked out, heels clicking against the floor like gunshots. 32 years old, birthday, alone, again. The other customers pretended not to stare, but he felt every eye on him, every pitying glance. He'd hidden his identity, hoping someone might see him for once, not his bank account. Instead, he got humiliated in a room full of strangers. But behind the counter, one woman wasn't laughing. She was watching. And what she did next would change everything. If you want to see how this story ends, stay until the very last word. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Lucas Hale had learned early in life that money didn't buy the things that mattered. It bought silence. It bought distance. It bought people who smiled too wide and laughed too loud at jokes that weren't funny. What it didn't buy was someone who'd sit across from you and see you, really see you, without calculating what they could get in return. Tonight was supposed to be different. He'd set up the blind date through a friend of a friend, someone who didn't know his last name or what he did for a living. Just Lucas, 32, single dad, likes coffee and quiet evenings. No mention of Hale Industries. No mention of the Forbes list. No mention of the penthouse downtown or the fact that his watch cost more than most people's cars. He'd left all of that behind, dressed in jeans and a jacket he'd bought from a thrift store 2 weeks ago, specifically for this. The sleeves were a little too long, the zipper stuck, perfect. The cafe was called Moonbeam, one of those neighborhood spots that hadn't been swallowed by Starbucks yet, with mismatched chairs and local art on the walls that nobody ever bought. It smelled like cinnamon and old books. Lucas had chosen it because it was the opposite of everywhere he usually went. No one here would recognize him. No one here cared about quarterly earnings or hostile takeovers or which tech startup he'd just acquired. He sat by the window, watching snow begin to fall outside, fat flakes drifting down lazy and unbothered. His coffee had gone cold 20 minutes ago. His date was late. Not fashionably late, actually late. He checked his phone. Nothing. The cafe wasn't crowded. Tuesday night, almost 8 o'clock. A couple of college students hunched over laptops in the corner, headphones on. An older man doing a crossword puzzle. And behind the counter, a woman with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, wiping down the espresso machine with the kind of focus that suggested she'd rather be anywhere else. Lucas looked back at his phone. Still nothing. He was about to text his friend, ask if he'd been stood up, if this whole thing had been a joke, when the door chimed. Cold air rushed in. A woman walked through, shaking snow from her hair. Mid-30s, expensive coat, designer bag, the kind of boots that cost $400 and looked like they'd never touched actual winter slush. She looked around the cafe with an expression Lucas had seen 1,000 times before. The look of someone evaluating whether a place was worth their time. Her eyes landed on him. He sat up straighter, smiled. Small, not too eager. She walked over, stopped at his table, looked him up and down in a way that made something cold settle in his chest. "Lucas?" Her voice was flat. Not a question, really. More like confirmation of a suspicion. "Yeah, hi. You must be... What are you wearing?" She cut him off, lips curling into something that wasn't quite a smile. More like the beginning of a laugh she was trying to hold back. Lucas blinked. "I'm sorry? Is that a thrift store jacket?" She leaned in slightly, like she was inspecting something distasteful. "Oh my God, it is. I can see the tag sticking out." Heat crawled up his neck. He reached back, felt the tag he'd forgotten to cut off. Stupid mistake. Let me guess," she interrupted again, straightening up, voice getting louder. A few heads turned. "You're one of those guys who thinks dressing down makes you interesting, like you're so deep and anti-materialistic?" She actually laughed then, sharp and bright. "Honey, I didn't sign up for a charity case. I thought I was meeting someone with, I don't know, ambition, self-respect." The college students had stopped typing. The old man had lowered his newspaper. Even the woman behind the counter had paused, cloth frozen mid-wipe. Lucas felt his face burning. "I don't think that's... You know what? I'm good." She was already turning, already walking away. "I've got standards. Maybe try Goodwill for your next date, too. You can make a whole thing of it." The door chimed again. She was gone. The cafe stayed quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then the murmurs started. Low voices, someone coughing, the espresso machine hissing back to life. Everyone pretending they hadn't just witnessed that. Everyone failing. Lucas sat very still. His hands were shaking. He pressed them flat against the table, against the cold wood grain, and stared at his reflection in the dark window. 32 years old, $3 billion in assets. And he couldn't even get through a blind date without getting laughed out of a cafe. Happy birthday to me. He'd said it out loud. Barely a whisper, but he'd said it. Excuse me? Lucas looked up. The woman from behind the counter stood next to his table, holding a small plate. On it sat a slice of chocolate cake with a single candle stuck in the center, already lit. The flame wavered slightly. She set it down in front of him without asking. No one should spend their birthday alone. Lucas stared at this cake, at the candle, at this complete stranger who just brought him the first kind thing he'd experienced all night. His throat felt tight. I didn't order this. I know. She smiled, tired around the edges, but real. It's on the house. Make a wish. She walked away before he could respond, back behind the counter where she started washing mugs like nothing had happened, like she brought lonely men birthday cake every day. Lucas looked down at the candle. The wax was already starting to drip, pooling around the base. He should blow it out. Make a wish, like she said. But he didn't know what to wish for anymore. He'd spent the last 10 years wishing for things that money could buy, and it had gotten him exactly nowhere that mattered. So he just sat there, watching the flame dance, while the snow fell harder outside and the cafe slowly emptied around him. When he finally blew out the candle, he didn't make a wish at all. He just thought, that was kind, and maybe that was enough. Lucas didn't plan to come back. He had a company to run, a son to raise, a life that existed in glass towers and boardrooms and houses too big for two people. Moonbeam Cafe was a one-time thing, a moment, a mistake he'd made thinking he could be normal for one night. But 3 days later, he found himself parking 2 blocks away and walking through the cold because parking clothes felt like admitting he was actually going there on purpose. The cafe looked different in daylight, smaller somehow. The local art on the walls turned out to be mostly bad watercolors of landscapes that didn't exist. The mismatched chairs were more mismatched than charming, but it was warm inside and it smelled like coffee. And when Lucas walked in, the woman behind the counter glanced up and gave him the smallest nod of recognition. He ordered a black coffee. She poured it without comment, handed it over. Thanks for the cake, Lucas said. The other night. She shrugged. It was just cake. Still, it was kind. Something flickered across her face, surprise maybe, or suspicion, like kindness was something she wasn't used to having noticed. You're welcome. He paid, left a $5 tip on a $3 coffee, sat down at the same table by the window. The cafe was busier during the day, a mom with twin toddlers trying to negotiate snack time, a group of remote workers camped out with laptops and those enormous headphones everyone wore now, and in the corner, a kid, maybe 7 or 8, doing homework at a table too big for him, pencil grip too tight, tongue poking out in concentration. Lucas watched him for a moment. The kid reminded him of his own son. That same fierce focus, like if he just tried hard enough, the math problem would make sense. That's my son. Lucas jerked his head up. The woman had appeared next to his table again, this time carrying a tray of dirty mugs. She nodded toward the kid. He's doing homework here? His school's far. I pick him up, bring him here until my shift ends at 6. She said it matter of fact, like it was just how things were. No complaint, no explanation needed. That's a long day for a kid. Yeah, well, she shifted the tray. We make it work. She walked away before he could ask her name, before he could say anything else stupid or prying or rich person trying to understand poverty. He drank his coffee and tried not to stare at the kid in the corner, tried not to think about his own son waiting at home with a nanny who cost more per month than this woman probably made in 3. He came back the next day, and the day after that. Always black coffee, always the same table, always the same quiet nod from the woman behind the counter, who he learned was named Nina after he overheard someone calling her from the back. Nina Carter. Single mom. Worked doubles most days. Her son's name was Jamie. He was 8. He liked dinosaurs and hated fractions and always left his jacket on the back of his chair instead of hanging it up like his mom asked. Lucas learned all of this just by being there, by sitting quiet and watching and not asking questions, by being invisible in the way only lonely people know how to be. On the fifth visit, he brought something with him. It wasn't expensive. That was the rule he'd made for himself. Nothing expensive, nothing that would make Nina suspicious or uncomfortable or realize he was anything other than a guy who drank too much coffee and didn't talk much. So he'd gone to a bookstore, a real one with creaky floors and a cat sleeping in the window, and found a picture book about dinosaurs. Educational, but fun. The kind of thing a kid like Jamie would actually read. He waited until Nina was busy with a rush of afternoon customers, then walked over to Jamie's table. "Hey." Jamie looked up, pencil frozen mid-letter. "Hi? You like dinosaurs?" Immediate suspicion. "Why?" "Smart kid." Lucas smiled. "I found this. Thought you might want it." He set the book down on the table. "It's got a T-Rex on page 15 that looks like it's actually screaming. Pretty cool." Jamie's eyes went wide. He pulled the book closer, flipped it open, started scanning pages with the speed of a kid who'd been reading since he was 4. "Is this for me?" "Yeah, if you want it." "I want it." Jamie looked up, grinned. "Thanks, mister." "Lucas." "And you're welcome." When Lucas turned around, Nina was watching from behind the counter. Their eyes met. She didn't smile, but she didn't look angry either. Just careful. Like she was trying to figure something out. Lucas went back to his table, drank his coffee, left without saying anything else. The next day, Jamie waved at him when he walked in. Nina poured his coffee without being asked, set it down with a small nod that might have been "thank you" or might have been "I'm watching you." Hard to tell. Days turned into a week. 1 week turned into 2. Lucas started timing his visits around Jamie's schedule. Not on purpose, or at least that's what he told himself. But somehow he always seemed to arrive right around 3:30, right when Nina picked Jamie up from school and brought him back to the cafe. And somehow he always seemed to have something in his pocket, a pack of colored pencils, a small notebook, a puzzle book. Nothing big, nothing flashy, just things a kid might like. Jamie started sitting at Lucas's table sometimes, doing homework while Lucas answered emails on his phone. They didn't talk much. Jamie would ask the occasional question, "What's 6 times 7?" And Lucas would answer, and that would be it. Easy. Uncomplicated. Nina never said anything about it, but Lucas noticed she stopped watching him like he might be a threat, started watching him like he might be something else, something she hadn't quite figured out yet. One afternoon, Jamie looked up from his math worksheet and squinted at Lucas. "Are you rich?" Lucas nearly choked on his coffee. "Why would you ask that?" "You don't dress rich, but you tip like you are." Jamie said it casually, like he was commenting on the weather. "Mom says people who tip $5 on a $3 coffee are either rich or bad at math." "Maybe I'm just bad at math." "You helped me with fractions yesterday. You're good at math." Lucas laughed. He couldn't help it. "You got me? I'm comfortable." "Comfortable means rich, but you don't want to say it." "You're a sharp kid, you know that." Jamie grinned. "Mom says I'm too sharp. Says I'm going to cut myself one day." "Your mom's probably right." They went back to their respective work, Jamie's homework, Lucas's emails, and didn't talk about money again. But Lucas felt something shift, a small crack in the wall he'd built between his real life and this cafe, this strange little pocket of normal he'd carved out for himself. That night, lying in bed in his penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a city that never quite went dark, Lucas thought about Jamie's question. "Are you rich?" Yeah, he was. So rich it was almost funny. So rich that the amount of money he spent on birthday gifts for business associates could have paid Nina's rent for a year. Probably 2 years. Maybe 3. And he was lying to her. Not directly. He'd never actually told her he was anything other than what he appeared to be. But lying by omission was still lying. Every time she poured his coffee and smiled that tired smile, every time Jamie showed him a dinosaur drawing and asked what he thought, Lucas was lying. He told himself it didn't matter, told himself this wasn't real anyway, just a temporary escape from a life that had started to feel like a cage. He'd stop going to the cafe soon, taper off, let it fade naturally. But the next afternoon, he was back. Same table, same coffee, same lie. Shit. 3 weeks in, Nina finally talked to him. Really talked to him. not just the transactional exchange of customer and server. It was late, almost closing time. The cafe was empty except for the two of them and Jamie, who'd fallen asleep in the corner booth, head pillowed on his backpack. Nina was wiping down tables with that same focused intensity she brought to everything. Lucas was still at his table by the window, long finished with his coffee but not ready to leave yet. Leaving meant going home to a house that echoed. Leaving meant answering emails from people who wanted things from him. Leaving meant being Lucas Hale again instead of just Lucas. You know you don't have to stay till closing, right? Lucas looked up. Nina stood next to his table, cloth in hand, expression unreadable. I know, He trailed off. Didn't know how to finish that sentence without sounding pathetic. You just what? I like it here. She studied him for a long moment. Then without asking, she pulled out the chair across from him and sat down. First time she'd sat down in his presence. First time she'd stopped moving since he'd met her. Why? Why what? Why do you like it here? She gestured around at the cafe, the bad art, the worn floors, the espresso machine that sounded like it might die any day. This place isn't special. Coffee's not even that good. I'd know. I make it. Lucas smiled. It's quiet. It's a coffee shop. It's literally never quiet. Different kind of quiet. The noise here, he struggled to find the words. It doesn't want anything from me. You know? Nina tilted her head, still studying him. No, I don't know. Explain. So he did. Not everything. Not the money, not the company, not the truth that would crack this whole thing open. But he told her about being tired, about how sometimes you could be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone, about how every conversation started to feel like a negotiation, every relationship like a transaction. I don't have a lot of people who just see me, he finished lamely, without wanting something. Nina was quiet for a long time. Then, that why you bring Jamie presents? Trying to buy someone who'll see you? It hit harder than she probably meant it to. Lucas flinched. No, I bring him things because he's a good kid and he reminds me of my son. You have a kid? Yeah, he's 9. Lives with me full time. Where's his mom? Dead, car accident, 3 years ago. Nina's expression shifted, softened at the edges, lost some of that careful guardedness. I'm sorry. Me too. They sat there in the quiet, the real quiet, the kind that happens when two people stop performing for each other. Outside, snow had started falling again. Jamie snored softly in the corner. I wasn't trying to buy anything, Lucas said finally. I know what it's like to be a single parent. It's hard, and Jamie seems like he could use a friend, that's all. Nina looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded, once. Okay. Okay? Okay. She stood up, picked up her rag. But for the record, coffee's on you tomorrow. I'm raising prices. Lucas laughed. Deal. She walked away, back to cleaning. But something had changed. Some invisible line had been crossed. He could feel it. When he left that night, Jamie waved sleepily from where Nina was trying to wake him up, and Nina looked over and gave Lucas a small smile that felt like it might actually be real. Lucas drove home in the snow, hands tight on the wheel, and tried not to think about how good that smile had made him feel. Tried not to think about how much he wanted to see it again. Tried not to think about what would happen when she found out who he really was. The thing about lies is they get heavier the longer you carry them. Lucas knew this, had always known this. In business, he'd built a career on knowing exactly when to reveal information and when to hold it close. Timing was everything. Control the narrative, control the outcome. But this wasn't business. And he was losing control of the narrative in ways that made his chest feel tight when he thought about it too long. He'd started dreaming about the cafe. About Nina's laugh. He'd heard it exactly 3 times, always when Jamie said something unexpectedly funny. About the way she pushed her hair back when she was stressed. About that moment every afternoon when she'd see him walk in and her shoulders would relax just slightly, like his presence made the day a little easier to carry. He was in trouble. He knew he was in trouble. But he kept going back. 4 weeks became 5. 5 became 6. The presents for Jamie got slightly bigger. A set of dinosaur figurines, a science kit, a book about space, but still carefully calibrated to seem like things a normal person might buy. Nothing that would trigger alarm bells. Nothing that would make Nina ask questions he couldn't answer. His son, Evan, started asking where Dad went every afternoon. Just a coffee shop, Lucas told him. For 2 hours? I like the coffee. Evan, 9 years old and too smart for his own good, just looked at him. You have a coffee machine in your office that costs more than a car. How do you know how much the coffee machine costs? I looked it up. Why do you go to a coffee shop when you have a $14,000 coffee machine at work? Lucas didn't have a good answer for that, so he deflected, asked about school, about Evan's day, about anything that would make his son stop looking at him like he was a puzzle that didn't quite fit together anymore. But Evan was right. It didn't make sense. None of this made sense. Lucas Hale, CEO of Hale Industries, worth $3 billion, spending 2 hours a day in a neighborhood cafe pretending to be someone he wasn't, bringing gifts to a woman's kid, drinking overpriced coffee that wasn't even good, lying. All of it was lying. And the worst part? He was starting to forget why he'd started lying in the first place. It happened on a Wednesday. Late afternoon, almost March now, the snow finally giving way to that gray slush period where winter hadn't left but wasn't quite trying anymore either. Lucas walked into Moonbeam at his usual time, and immediately something felt wrong. Nina was behind the counter, but her movements were sharp, angry. She was slamming things, not hard enough to break anything, but hard enough that people were glancing over. Jamie sat in the corner, hunched small, pencil gripped white-knuckled. Lucas ordered his coffee. Nina poured it without looking at him, hands shaking slightly. Everything okay? Fine. She bit the word off, set his cup down hard enough that coffee sloshed over the rim. Everything's fine. It very clearly wasn't fine. Lucas paid, left his usual tip, went to his table. Tried to focus on his phone, couldn't. 20 minutes passed. A man walked in, late 40s, expensive suit, the kind of guy who thought waitresses existed to serve him in every sense of the word. He ordered something complicated, something with specifications and substitutions, and a tone that made it clear he viewed Nina as an inconvenience. Nina made his drink. Got the order wrong, or maybe he changed his mind, hard to tell. Either way, he started complaining, loudly, about the service, the quality, the fact that he'd been coming here for years, and it kept getting worse. Nina apologized. Remade the drink. The guy kept going, getting louder, other customers starting to look uncomfortable. That's when Lucas heard it. Maybe if you spent less time flirting with customers and more time doing your job, you'd get things right. Nina's face went white, then red. Excuse me? You heard me. I've seen you chatting up that guy. He jerked his thumb toward Lucas. Every day for weeks. Meanwhile, paying customers get treated like garbage. I'll remake your drink. Again. But you need to lower your voice. Or what? You'll have your boyfriend throw me out? Lucas was standing before he consciously decided to move, walking toward the counter, every eye in the cafe tracking him. Hey! The guy turned, looked Lucas up and down, thrift store jacket, jeans, nothing impressive. What? She's doing her job. You're being disrespectful. Maybe take it down a notch. Oh, great. The boyfriend speaks. The guy laughed, ugly and sharp. Let me guess. You come here every day, nurse one coffee for hours, leave a big tip to impress her? Classic. Women like her eat that up. Single moms especially. Nina made a sound like she'd been slapped. Lucas felt something cold slide through his chest. You need to leave. Who's going to make me? You? The guy stepped closer. Taller than Lucas, broader. Confidence of someone who'd never been properly checked. Look at you. Can't even afford a decent jacket. What, you think because you buy her kid a few toys, you're going to swoop in and play hero? Lucas didn't move. Didn't blink. Used the voice he used in boardrooms when someone needed to be reminded exactly who they were talking to. I'm going to say this once. You're going to take your drink. Or not, I don't care. You're going to walk out that door. And you're not coming back. Clear? Something in his tone must have landed because the guy's expression flickered. Uncertainty, just for a second. This is a public place. I can... No, you can't. Lucas didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. Leave. Now. The guy looked at Nina, at Lucas, at the other customers, all watching now. Then he grabbed his coffee and stormed out, muttering about lawsuits and complaints, and how he'd never come back anyway. The door slammed. The cafe stayed quiet. Lucas turned to Nina. "You okay?" She was staring at him, really staring, like she was seeing him for the first time. "What just happened?" "Guy was a jerk. He's gone." "No, I mean..." She shook her head. "Who are you?" "What?" "That thing you just did. That voice. That's not..." She gestured vaguely. "Normal people don't talk like that. Normal people don't make guys twice their size back down just by using a certain tone." Lucas felt the ground shifting under him. "I just told him to leave. That's all." "No, that's not all." Nina was still staring. "You sounded like someone used to being listened to. Like someone who knows people will do what he says because they always do." Behind her, Jamie was watching too, quiet, waiting. "Nina, I don't know you." She said it soft, almost wondering. "I've been talking to you for 6 weeks, and I don't know anything about you." "Not really. Where you work, where you live, why you're really here." "I told you. You told me what you wanted me to believe. That's different." The other customers were pretending not to listen, doing that thing where everyone suddenly became very interested in their phones. Lucas stood there, coffee shop floor under his feet, lies piling up around him, and knew this was it. The moment. Tell her the truth or watch it all fall apart anyway. "Can we talk?" His voice came out rougher than he meant it to. "Not here. Outside?" Nina looked at him for a long moment. Then she turned to the other barista, a college kid who'd been watching everything with wide eyes. "Cover for me. 5 minutes." She grabbed her coat, walked past Lucas without looking at him, out the door into the cold gray afternoon. Lucas followed. They stood on the sidewalk, cars hissing past on wet pavement, the sky threatening snow again. "So?" Nina crossed her arms. Not defensive, just waiting. "Who are you?" Lucas opened his mouth, closed it, tried to find words that wouldn't sound insane. "I'm exactly who I said I was. Lucas, single dad. I have a son named Evan. My wife died 3 years ago. All of that's true. And the rest? The rest is complicated. Try me." He could do it, right now. Just say it. "I'm Lucas Hale. I run a company you've probably heard of. I have more money than I know what to do with. I've been lying to you since the day we met because I wanted someone to see me as a person instead of a bank account." But looking at Nina, at her crossed arms, her guarded expression, the way she was already pulling back even though she was still standing there, Lucas knew the truth wouldn't fix this. The truth would just confirm what she already suspected, that he'd been playing her. That none of this was real. "I'm just someone who wanted to be normal for a while," he said instead. "That's the truth. Everything else, where I work, what I do, it doesn't matter. Because when I'm here, I'm just Lucas. And you're just Nina. And Jamie's just a kid who likes dinosaurs. And that's all I wanted. That's not how life works. You don't get to just be one thing." "Why not?" "Because people deserve honesty. Because I have a son who looks up to you now. Because I..." She stopped, looked away. "Because I started to think you might be someone I could trust." "You can trust me. Can I?" She looked back at him, and her eyes were too bright. "Because right now all I know is that you've been coming to my cafe for weeks, getting close to my kid, and I don't even know your last name. Hale. It's Hale." Something flickered across her face. "Hale? Yeah. Like Hale Industries?" And there it was, the moment everything cracked open. Lucas didn't answer, didn't need to. His silence was answer enough. Nina took a step back, then another. "Oh my God." "Nina, you're him. You're Lucas Hale. The Lucas Hale. It's not, I served you coffee for 6 weeks, and you're one of the richest men in the city." She laughed, but it sounded wrong, broken. "What was this? Some kind of social experiment? See how the poor people live?" "No, God, no. I just wanted..." "What? To slum it for a while? Buy my kids some toys and feel good about yourself? That's not fair. You lied to me. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell me the truth. Which is the same thing. Nina shook her head, backing toward the cafe door. I need to get back to work. Please don't come back here. Nina, wait. I mean it, Lucas, or should I call you Mr. Hale? I don't even know anymore. She pulled open the door, looked at him one last time. I really thought you might be different. I thought you might actually see me. Turns out you were just playing dress-up while I was actually living my life. The door closed behind her. Through the window, Lucas watched her walk to the back of the cafe, shoulders rigid. Jamie looked up, confused, and she said something to him, too far away for Lucas to hear. Then she disappeared into the back room. Lucas stood on the sidewalk in the cold, wet snow starting to fall again, and felt the weight of every lie he'd told settling onto his shoulders. He'd wanted someone to see him. Instead, he'd made sure nobody could. He got in his car, drove home, spent the rest of the evening sitting in his office, staring at the city lights, trying to figure out when wanting to be normal had turned into just another way of being dishonest. His phone buzzed. A text from Evan. You okay? You seem sad. Lucas typed back, I'm fine. Just a long day. Another lie. So easy. They all were, once you started. He didn't go back to Moonbeam the next day, or the day after that. Nina had asked him not to, and for once, he did what someone asked instead of what he wanted. But he couldn't stop thinking about her, about Jamie, about that cafe and the strange pocket of normal he'd found there, even if it was built on a foundation of things he hadn't said. A week passed. Then two. Lucas threw himself into work, into being the CEO everyone expected him to be. Made decisions worth millions. Attended meetings that would bore a normal person to tears. Came home to Evan and tried to be present, tried to be dad, tried not to think about a woman who poured coffee and raised a kid alone and had every right to hate him. Evan asked once, how come you don't go to that coffee shop anymore? Just got busy. You're always busy. You went anyway before. Things change. Evan looked at him with those two old eyes kids get when they've lost a parent young. Did you mess something up? Lucas thought about lying, thought about deflecting, thought about all the ways he'd gotten so good at not answering questions. Instead, he said, yeah, I did. Can you fix it? I don't know, maybe. Maybe it's too late. Mom used to say it's never too late if you mean it. And there it was, wisdom from a dead woman delivered by their 9-year-old son. Lucas felt something crack in his chest. Your mom was usually right, so fix it. It's not that simple. Why not? Because I'm scared. Because I don't know how. Because what if I try and she still doesn't forgive me? And then I have to live with knowing I can't fix this, can't buy my way out of it, can't make it right no matter how much money I throw at the problem. But he couldn't say any of that to his son, so he just said, I'll think about it. Evan nodded, satisfied, and went back to his homework. Lucas sat there in his enormous house with its cathedral ceilings and its art that cost more than Nina probably made in a year, and tried to figure out what fixing it would even look like. He could apologize. That was the obvious move. Show up at the cafe, say he was sorry, explain himself better than he had on that sidewalk in the snow. But Nina had asked him not to come back, and maybe that was answer enough. Maybe some things, once broken, stayed broken. Lucas thought about the birthday cake with its single candle, about the way Nina had set it down without asking, without expecting anything in return, about how she'd said no one should spend their birthday alone. She'd been kind to him when she thought he had nothing. That meant something. That meant everything. He couldn't make it right. But maybe he could do something right. Lucas pulled out his phone, made a call, started putting together something that might not fix what he'd broken, but might at least show Nina that he'd been listening, that he'd seen her too, even if he'd been too much of a coward to let her see all of him. It took 3 days to arrange, 3 days of calls and meetings, and using every resource at his disposal, the ones that came with being Lucas Hale instead of just Lucas. And when it was done, when everything was set up and ready, Lucas wrote a letter. Not an email, not a text, an actual letter, handwritten on paper that didn't cost a fortune because he'd learned his lesson about pretending to be something he wasn't. He didn't go to the cafe, didn't force a confrontation, just sent the letter by courier, anonymous, nothing fancy, and hoped that maybe this time honesty would be enough. Then he waited and waited. and wondered if some mistakes were just too big to fix, even when you meant it. The letter arrived on a Thursday morning, slipped under the cafe door before Nina opened for the day. She almost missed it. Would have, probably, if Jamie hadn't spotted the envelope while she was wrestling with the espresso machine that had chosen today of all days to start making a grinding noise that sounded expensive. "Mom, there's something on the floor." Nina glanced over. White envelope, her name written across the front in handwriting that was almost aggressively neat. No return address? No stamp? Hand-delivered, then. She picked it up, turned it over. Nothing else. Just her name. "Who's it from?" Jamie asked, already losing interest, heading toward his usual corner table with his backpack. "Don't know yet." Nina slid her finger under the seal, pulled out 2 pieces of paper. One was a letter. The other was something else, something that made her hands go still. She read the letter first. "Nina, I know you asked me not to come back, and I'm respecting that, but I need you to understand something. I didn't come to your cafe looking for charity or entertainment or whatever you think rich people do when they're bored. I came because I was tired, not physically tired, tired of being seen as a checkbook, tired of every conversation being a negotiation, tired of wondering if anyone would choose me if I didn't have money. That night at the cafe, when your date walked out, I thought I'd finally tried something honest. Turns out I was still lying, just in a different way. You were kind to me when you thought I had nothing. That meant more than you know. It still does. I can't fix what I broke, but I can do this." The enclosed scholarship is for Jamie. Full ride through high school, including books, supplies, extracurriculars, everything. It's set up through an independent foundation, completely separate from me. No strings, no conditions. You don't have to see me or talk to me or forgive me. It's not contingent on anything except Jamie being Jamie. I'm not trying to buy your forgiveness. I know that's not how this works. I just want to make sure that kid who loves dinosaurs gets every chance he deserves. And you get to stop working doubles. Or don't. It's your choice. That's the point. You said I wasn't seeing you. You were right. I was so busy trying to be seen that I didn't notice I was doing the same thing to you that everyone does to me. Making assumptions, putting you in a box, treating you like a means to an end instead of a person. For what it's worth, I see you now. I see someone who works herself to exhaustion for her kid, someone who brings birthday cake to strangers, someone who deserves better than a guy in a thrift store jacket lying about who he is. Thank you for the coffee. Thank you for the kindness. Thank you for reminding me what it feels like to be human. I hope Jamie likes the scholarship. Tell him the T-Rex on page 15 is still my favorite. Lucas. Nina read it twice, then a third time. Her hands were shaking. The scholarship letter was real. Official letterhead, legal language, a phone number to call for verification. Full tuition through high school at any accredited institution. $15,000 annually for expenses. Renewable every year as long as Jamie maintained passing grades. She did the math without meaning to. $60,000 minimum. Probably more if Jamie went to a private school, which she'd never even let herself consider as an option. "Mom, you okay?" Nina looked up. Jamie was watching her with that expression kids get when they know something's wrong but don't know how to ask about it. "Yeah, baby, I'm fine." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Just some news. Good news or bad news?" That was the question, wasn't it? Nina looked down at the letter again, at Lucas's handwriting, at the words "I see you now," like that made any of this okay. "I don't know yet," she said honestly. She tucked the papers into her apron pocket and went back to fighting with the espresso machine. But all morning, through the rush of commuters and the mid-morning lull and the lunch crowd, she kept touching the pocket, making sure the letters were still there, making sure she hadn't imagined them. At noon, during a rare quiet moment, she pulled out her phone and called the number on the scholarship letter. A woman answered, professional, pleasant. "Harper Foundation, how may I help you?" "Hi, I received a scholarship letter for my son. I wanted to verify it's legitimate." "Of course. Can I have the student's name?" "Jamie Carter." Keys clicking. A pause. "Yes, I have his file here. The scholarship was established 3 days ago by an anonymous donor. Full funding through secondary education." "Is there something specific you'd like to verify?" "Who set it up?" "I'm sorry, that information is confidential. The donor requested complete anonymity." But it's real? This is real money, not some kind of scam? It's very real, Ms. Carter. The funds have already been transferred to our accounts. I can email you the full details if you'd like. You'll need to sign some paperwork, but there are no conditions beyond maintaining academic eligibility. Nina pressed her palm against her forehead. Okay, yes. Email me the details. Absolutely. You should have everything within the hour. And Ms. Carter, congratulations. Your son is very fortunate. Nina hung up, stared at her phone, felt something huge and terrifying pressing against her chest. The bell over the door chimed. An older woman came in, ordered a latte. Nina made it on autopilot, hand steady even though her brain was screaming. $60,000. Minimum. From a man she'd known for 6 weeks who turned out to be someone else entirely. From a man she'd told never to come back. The espresso machine made that grinding noise again. Nina hit it with the side of her fist, not hard, just frustrated, and it settled back into its normal rhythm. Everything settling back to normal except her. That evening, after closing, after Jamie had finished his homework and was sprawled on the couch at their tiny apartment watching a show about dinosaurs, Nina sat at their kitchen table and read Lucas's letter for the 4th time. You were kind to me when you thought I had nothing. She had been kind, not because she expected anything back, just because it was someone's birthday and he'd looked so small sitting there after that woman tore him apart in front of everyone. Nina thought about that night. The way Lucas had whispered happy birthday to me, like he was trying to convince himself it was okay to be alone. The way his hands had shaken slightly when she set down the cake. She'd thought he was just another lonely guy. Maybe a little sad. Maybe going through something. She'd never imagined he was going through it from a penthouse. But did that change what she'd seen? Did money erase loneliness? Nina had spent her whole adult life being poor. She knew what it felt like to stretch a dollar until it screamed. Knew what it felt like to choose between gas money and groceries. Knew what it felt like to smile at customers who treated her like furniture while her feet ached and her back screamed and she calculated how many more hours until her shift ended. She'd never thought about what it might feel like to have everything money could buy and still be alone. Never considered that might be its own kind of poverty. Her phone buzzed. Text from her coworker, Maria. You see the news? Lucas Hale donated $2 million to Children's Hospital. Guys all over the press looking like he saves orphans for breakfast. Nina clicked the link. Sure enough, photos of Lucas in a suit that probably cost more than her car, shaking hands with hospital administrators, smiling that polished CEO smile that looked nothing like the small, real smile he'd had when Jamie showed him the dinosaur drawing. $2 million. And he'd given her son $60,000 like it was nothing, like it was the least he could do. Maybe it was. Nina set her phone down, looked at Jamie on the couch, absorbed in his show, completely unaware that his entire future had just shifted. She should tell him, should sit him down and explain that he had a scholarship now, that he could go to any school he wanted, that money wasn't going to be the thing that limited him anymore. But if she told him, she'd have to explain where it came from. And if she explained that, she'd have to admit she'd been wrong. Not about Lucas lying. He had lied, by omission, if nothing else. But wrong about what the lying meant. Wrong about assuming he'd been playing games. Wrong about thinking she'd been nothing but a social experiment to him. The letter didn't sound like a man who'd been playing games. It sounded like a man who'd been desperate. And Nina knew what desperation looked like. She saw it in the mirror every morning. Mom, Jamie called from the couch. Can we have dinosaur nuggets for dinner? Sure, baby. She made dinner. They ate together at the table that wobbled because one leg was shorter than the others, talking about Jamie's day, about the science project he had coming up, about whether velociraptors could actually open doors like in the movies. Normal. Everything normal except the letter in her pocket that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. After Jamie went to bed, Nina pulled out her laptop, ancient thing that took 5 minutes to boot up, and did something she should have done weeks ago. She looked up Lucas Hale. The search results went on for pages, Forbes profiles, business articles, photos at charity events, always in a tux, always with that same polished smile. Net worth estimated at $3 billion. Took over his father's company at 28, expanded it into tech, real estate, pharmaceuticals. Youngest CEO on the Fortune 500 list. And buried 20 pages deep, past all the business coverage, she found the personal stuff. The obituary for his wife, Elizabeth Hale, Dead at 30 from a drunk driver who'd run a red light. The small mentions in society pages about Lucas withdrawing from public life, becoming more private, rarely seen outside of business functions. One article from about a year ago, just a gossip column really, speculated about Lucas's dating life, or lack thereof. Quoted an anonymous source saying he'd given up after a string of women who were more interested in his portfolio than his personality. Nina closed the laptop, sat in the dark of her living room, listening to the radiator clank and the neighbors arguing through the thin walls. She'd called him a liar, told him not to come back. And maybe he had lied, but so had she. She'd lied when she'd pretended not to care that he came back every day. Lied when she'd told herself the coffee was the only thing bringing him there. Lied when she'd started looking forward to 3:30 every afternoon, to the quiet man by the window who tipped too much and made her son laugh. Her phone was in her hand before she consciously decided to pick it up. She had his number, he'd written it at the bottom of the letter. In case you need anything, or want to yell at me. Both are fair. Nina typed out a message, deleted it, typed another one, deleted that too. What was she supposed to say? Thank you? I'm sorry? I was wrong about you, but also you were wrong about you, and we're both just people trying to figure out how to be human and failing at it most of the time. She settled on, the scholarship is too much. 3 dots appeared immediately, like he'd been waiting, like maybe he'd been staring at his phone for days hoping she'd text. It's not enough, but it's what I can do. Nina stared at the message, typed, you didn't have to do this. I know. I wanted to. Why? The 3 dots appeared and disappeared 3 times. Nina watched them, heart beating too fast, wondering what he was typing and deleting and typing again. Finally, because you brought me cake when you thought I was nobody. Because Jamie deserves a chance. Because I spent 6 weeks lying to you and this is the only truth I have left. Nina's eyes were burning. She blinked hard, pressed her palms against them. I shouldn't have told you not to come back. Yes, you should have. I lied to you. You had every right. You didn't lie. You just didn't tell me everything. That's the same thing. Is it? Another long pause. Then, I don't know. Maybe. Does it matter? Nina thought about that, about all the things she didn't tell people, about how she smiled at rude customers and pretended it didn't hurt, about how she cried in her car after Jamie's school career day because all the other kids' parents had fancy jobs and she was just a barista, about how lonely she was sometimes, how hard it was to be everything for Jamie when she barely felt like enough for herself. Everyone had things they didn't tell. That was just being human. I think maybe we all lie a little bit, she typed, just to survive. That's bleak. That's life. Fair enough. Nina looked at the phone, at the conversation that felt like they were circling something without naming it. She took a breath. The letter said, you see me now. What do you see? This time the pause was even longer. Nina waited, watching those 3 dots appear and disappear, wondering if she'd asked too much. I see someone who works too hard, who gives too much, who probably hasn't had a day off in months. I see someone who brought a stranger birthday cake because it was the right thing to do. I see someone who loves her kids so fiercely it makes me remember why I keep trying to be a good dad, even when I'm failing at it. I see someone who deserved honesty from me and didn't get it. I see someone I'd like to know better, if you'd let me. And I see someone who probably thinks I'm full of it right now, and that's okay too. Nina read it 3 times. Her chest felt too tight. I don't think you're full of it, she typed. I think you're lonely. Like I am. And I think maybe we both made mistakes. So what do we do about it? Good question. Nina didn't have an answer. She sat there in her dark apartment, phone glowing in her hands, and tried to figure out what came next. She could forgive him, move on, let Jamie accept the scholarship and never see Lucas again. Keep things clean and simple. Or she could do something stupidly complicated. Something risky. Something that might blow up in her face but might also be worth it. Come back to the cafe, she typed before she could talk herself out of it. Tomorrow. 3:30. We'll talk. Actually talk. No more pretending to be people we're not. Are you sure? No. But come anyway. Okay. I'll be there. Nina set her phone down, looked around at her tiny apartment with its secondhand furniture and its walls that needed paint, and its life that was small and hard and hers, Then she looked at the scholarship letter on the table, at the future it represented for Jamie, at the terrifying possibility that maybe, just maybe, something good could come from all this mess. She didn't sleep much that night, kept replaying the conversation, wondering if she was making another mistake, wondering if Lucas would actually show up, or if this was just another version of the blind date, another person who'd take one look at her real life and decide it wasn't worth the trouble. But 3:30 the next afternoon, right on time, the bell over the cafe door chimed and Lucas walked in. He was wearing the thrift store jacket, the one with the too long sleeves. Nina almost laughed. He walked to the counter, hands in his pockets, looking uncertain in a way that was so different from the CEO in all those photos. "Hi," he said. "Hi." Nina wiped her hands on her apron. The cafe was mostly empty, mid-afternoon lull, just a couple of laptop workers who weren't paying attention. "Black coffee?" "Please." She poured it, set it down. Their fingers brushed when he reached for the cup and Nina felt it like electricity. "So," Lucas said, We're talking. Where do we start?" Nina glanced at Jamie in his corner, deep into a book about space, then back at Lucas. "How about the truth, all of it? No more half stories." Lucas nodded. "Okay, truth." He took a breath. "My name is Lucas Hale. I'm 32. I run a company my father built, and I'm pretty sure I hate it most days, but I don't know how to walk away. I have a 9-year-old son named Evan who's smarter than me and notices everything. My wife died 3 years ago, and I still don't know how to talk about it without feeling like I'm going to break. I set up that blind date because I was tired of being alone, but I was more tired of being valued for my money. I came back to this cafe every day for 6 weeks because it was the only place I felt like a person. And I brought your son presents because he reminded me of mine, and because making him smile made me feel less like I was failing at everything." He stopped, swallowed hard. "That's the truth. All of it. Or most of it. The important parts, anyway." Nina felt something shift in her chest. "Okay, my turn." She leaned against the counter. "My name is Nina Carter. I'm 30. I work here 6 days a week, and I'm always tired. Jamie's father left when I was pregnant, and I haven't heard from him since. I work doubles because I have to, not because I want to. I haven't been on a date in 4 years because I don't have time, and I don't trust people anymore. I brought you that cake because you looked sad, and I know what sad looks like. I let you keep coming back because you were nice to my kid and because you didn't make me feel like just a waitress. And I got angry when I found out who you were because I felt stupid, like I'd been played, like I'd let myself believe in something that was too good to be true." She paused. "That's my truth. We good?" Lucas smiled, that real smile, the small one. "Yeah, we're good." "Okay then." Nina grabbed a cup, poured herself coffee for once. "So what now?" "Now we figure out if there's a version of this that's honest, where I don't have to pretend to be broke and you don't have to pretend you're okay with everything." "I don't know if I'm okay with everything." "That's fair. I wouldn't be either." Nina sipped her coffee. It was terrible. She really did make bad coffee. "The scholarship, that can't be about me." "It's not. It's about Jamie. He's a good kid. He deserves it." "But also it's about me." Lucas didn't deny it. "Yeah, also it's about you because you work too hard and you shouldn't have to. And because I can help and it doesn't cost me anything that matters." "See? That right there." Nina pointed at him. "That's the thing. You say it doesn't cost you anything, but $60,000 is everything to me. That's not the same world. We're not living the same life." "I know. So how does this work, you and me, or whatever this is?" "I don't know," Lucas said honestly, "but I'd like to find out. If you would." Nina looked at him, really looked, at the thrift store jacket and the uncertain expression, and the man who'd sat in her cafe for weeks just wanting to be seen. And she thought about loneliness, about how it didn't care about your bank account, about how being human meant wanting connection even when it was risky, even when it was complicated, even when it didn't make sense. "Okay," she said finally, "but we're doing this for real. No more hiding. You want to buy my kid presents? Fine, but you tell me first. You want to see me, you actually ask me out instead of just showing up every day hoping I'll notice. And I get to decide what I'm comfortable with. Deal?" "Deal." Lucas held out his hand. "Hi, I'm Lucas Hale. I'm a billionaire CEO with a dead wife and a complicated relationship with money, and I'd really like to take you to dinner sometime. Somewhere nice. Somewhere where you don't have to serve anyone. Nina shook his hand, felt that electricity again. Hi, I'm Nina Carter. I'm a broke single mom with trust issues and a kid who talks about dinosaurs too much, and I'd really like to say yes. But I need to go slow. Slow works. And I need you to understand that I'm never going to be comfortable with expensive things. I'm never going to fit into your world. I don't want you to fit into my world. My world is terrible. Lucas smiled. I was hoping maybe we could build a different one, somewhere in between. Nina felt herself smiling back. That's really cheesy. I know, sorry. Don't be. I kind of liked it. They stood there, hands still clasped, coffee getting cold, the afternoon light slanting through the windows, turning everything gold. In the corner, Jamie looked up from his book, saw them, and grinned like he knew exactly what was happening. Mom's got a boyfriend, he sing-songed. Jamie, hush, Nina said, but she was laughing. Can I tell him about the scholarship now? Nina looked at Lucas. Lucas shrugged. Your call. Yeah, Nina said. Yeah, go ahead. Jamie scrambled out of his chair, ran over. Lucas, Mom says I got a scholarship, like a real one, for school. I heard. That's amazing, buddy. You deserve it. Did you do it? Mom won't tell me, but I think you did it. Lucas glanced at Nina. She nodded. Yeah, Lucas said. I did it. Why? Because you're a smart kid, and because your mom works really hard to give you a good life, and because I can help, and it seemed like the right thing to do. Jamie processed this with all the seriousness of an 8-year-old receiving major news. Then he threw his arms around Lucas's waist. Thank you. Lucas looked startled, then his expression softened and he hugged Jamie back. You're welcome. Nina watched them and felt something dangerous blooming in her chest. Hope, maybe, or possibility. Or just the terrifying knowledge that she was letting someone in, letting them matter, letting them become part of the fragile life she'd built. Lucas caught her eye over Jamie's head, mouthed, Is this okay? Nina nodded. It was more than okay. It was the first thing that had felt right in a long time. When Jamie finally let go and went back to his book, Lucas turned back to Nina. So, dinner. This week? This week's crazy. Next week? Next week works. Friday? Friday I work until 9. Saturday then? Saturday I have to find a babysitter. Bring Jamie. We'll make it a thing. Evan would love to meet him. Nina hesitated. That's a lot. Meeting your kid. Only if you're ready. If not, we can wait. She thought about it. About slow versus scared. About protecting herself versus actually trying. No, let's do it. All of us. Dinner, but nowhere fancy. Somewhere kids can be kids. Pizza? Pizza works. It's a date. It's a date. Lucas finished his coffee, left a 20 on a $6 tab, and headed for the door. Halfway there, he turned back. Nina? Yeah? Thanks for giving me another chance. Thanks for not giving up when I told you to leave. He smiled, that real smile again, and walked out into the late afternoon. Nina watched him go, watched him climb into a car that probably cost more than her apartment building, watched him drive away. Then she looked down at the $20 bill, at the cafe around her, at Jamie reading contentedly in the corner. Her phone buzzed. Text from Lucas. I'm really bad at slow, just so you know. Nina laughed, typed back. Me too. We'll figure it out. Yeah, we will. She tucked her phone away and got back to work. The espresso machine was still making that grinding noise. The afternoon rush would start soon. Tomorrow she had another double shift. Life hadn't magically gotten easier just because a billionaire had walked into her cafe and decided he liked her. But maybe it had gotten a little less lonely. And maybe that was enough to start with. Saturday came too fast and not fast enough. Nina changed her outfit 3 times before settling on jeans and a sweater that didn't have coffee stains on it, a minor miracle given her line of work. Jamie bounced around the apartment asking questions she didn't have answers to. What's Evan like? Does he like dinosaurs? What kind of pizza are we getting? Is Lucas going to be weird now that you know he's rich? I don't know, probably pepperoni, and I hope not, Nina answered, in order, checking her reflection one more time. She looked tired. She always looked tired. No amount of concealer was going to fix that. You look pretty, Mom. Nina smiled at Jamie in the mirror. Thanks, baby. You look handsome. I know. He grinned, completely unself-conscious, in the way only 8-year-olds could be. They took the bus across town because Nina's car was making a noise that suggested its death was imminent, and she couldn't afford to deal with that this week. Lucas had offered to send a car, actually offered, like that was a normal thing people did, and Nina had shut that down immediately. Bus or nothing. The pizza place Lucas had chosen was called Sal's, a neighborhood spot that had been around forever, with plastic red tablecloths and a jukebox in the corner that probably still played actual records. Not fancy. Exactly what she'd asked for. Lucas and Evan were already there, sitting in a booth near the back. Evan looked like a smaller version of his father. Same dark hair, same serious eyes, but where Lucas always seemed slightly uncomfortable in his own skin, Evan had the easy confidence of a kid who'd never doubted his place in the world. Lucas stood when he saw them. He was wearing jeans and a regular shirt, no thrift store jacket this time, and Nina felt something flutter in her stomach that she absolutely did not have time for. Hey, he said. Hey yourself. This is Evan. Evan, this is Nina and Jamie. Evan stuck out his hand like he was meeting a business associate. Nice to meet you. Jamie shook it, clearly impressed by the formality. You too. Do you like dinosaurs? They're okay. I'm more into space. Space is cool too. Did you know that dinosaurs and space are basically the same because dinosaurs died from a meteor, which is from space? Evan considered this. That's actually a pretty good point. And just like that, the kids were off, sliding into the booth and immediately launching into a debate about whether astronauts or paleontologists had the better job. Nina sat down across from Lucas, hyper-aware of his knee almost touching hers under the table. Well, that was easy. Evan's good with people, better than I am. You're okay with people. I'm okay at pretending to be okay with people. There's a difference. A waitress came by. Older woman, looked like she'd been working there since the place opened. She didn't recognize Lucas, didn't treat him any differently than any other customer, and Nina watched some of the tension leave his shoulders. They ordered pizza, pepperoni for the kids, half mushroom, half sausage for the adults because apparently Lucas hated peppers as much as she did, which felt like the kind of small compatibility that shouldn't matter but somehow did. So, Lucas said after the waitress left. How was your week? Long? Yours? Same. Had a board meeting that lasted 4 hours. Pretty sure I aged a year. What do you even do in a board meeting for 4 hours? Argue about things that don't matter while ignoring things that do. It's an art form. Nina laughed. Sounds terrible. It really is. Lucas leaned back and his knee definitely touched hers this time. Neither of them moved away. I kept thinking about this. Tonight. All week. Yeah? Yeah. Almost texted you about 100 times. Why didn't you? Because you said slow and I was trying to respect that. How am I doing? Terrible. You texted me 17 times. 18, but who's counting? Nina smiled despite herself. They were good texts. Oh yeah? Which one was your favorite? The one about your son asking if you were dating the coffee lady. That was humiliating for me, just so you know. He's 9. He shouldn't be that observant. What'd you tell him? Lucas looked at her, something soft in his expression that made her chest feel tight. I told him I was trying to, that it was complicated, that I really liked the coffee lady, and I hoped she liked me back. And what'd he say? He said if she didn't like me back, she was probably smart, and I should respect her choices. Then he asked if this meant he could stay up late on weekends. Nina laughed, loud enough that the kids looked over. I like your son. He's pretty great. Smarter than me, like I said. The pizza arrived, and for a while they just ate and watched the kids interact. Evan was explaining something about Mars rovers, and Jamie was listening with the intensity of someone hearing the gospel. It was sweet. Weird, maybe. This collision of their two worlds, but sweet. They get along, Lucas observed. Almost like they're actual human children and not incompatible species. I wasn't sure. Evan doesn't have a lot of friends. He's too serious, gets that from me. Jamie doesn't have many either, gets too excited about things, talks too much. Sounds perfect to me. Nina looked at Lucas, at the way he was watching the kids with something gentle in his eyes, and felt that dangerous hope blooming again. She wanted to trust this, wanted to believe it could work. But she'd been burned before by wanting things. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything." "Why me? I mean, really, you could date anyone. Models, actresses, other CEOs, people who fit into your life. Why a broke barista with a kid and trust issues?" Lucas set down his pizza, wiped his hands on a napkin, took his time answering. "You want the real answer or the one that makes me sound less pathetic?" "Real answer. Because you're the first person in years who looked at me and didn't see dollar signs. Because you brought me birthday cake when I was nobody. Because you're kind without expecting anything back. Because watching you with Jamie reminds me why I keep trying to be a good dad, even when I'm screwing it up. Because you're real in a way nobody in my world is real." He paused. "And because when I'm with you, I don't feel like I'm playing a part. I just feel like me, even when me is kind of a mess." Nina's throat felt tight. "That's not pathetic." "No? No, that's honest. I like honest." "Good. Because I'm trying to be better at it." Under the table, Lucas's hand found hers. His palm was warm, slightly rough. Nina laced her fingers through his and felt something settle in her chest. "I like you too," she said quietly, "just so we're clear. Even though you're rich and weird and you tip too much. Especially because I tip too much? That doesn't hurt." They sat there, hands linked under the table, while the kids argued about whether you could grow plants on Mars, and the jukebox played something old and scratchy in the background. Normal. This whole thing felt weirdly normal, and Nina didn't trust normal, but she wanted to. After pizza, Lucas suggested ice cream. There was a place 2 blocks away, family-owned, the kind with too many flavors and samples in tiny plastic spoons. The kids ran ahead, not quite holding hands, but walking close enough that they might as well have been. "They're cute together," Nina said. "Yeah, Evan needs more friends. Kids his age, I mean. He spends too much time with adults. Jamie, too. Other kids don't really get him. Too much energy. Maybe they can hang out sometime. Without us. Just them." Nina glanced at him. "That's a big step. You trust me with your kid?" "Yeah, I do. Do you trust me with yours?" She thought about it. About Lucas bringing Jamie books and science kits and always asking him about his day like the answers mattered. About the scholarship that had nothing to do with her and everything to do with a kid deserving a chance. "Yeah," she said. "I think I do." Inside the ice cream shop, Evan ordered something complicated with 3 flavors and gummy bears. Jamie got chocolate with sprinkles, simple and enthusiastic. Lucas got vanilla. "I'm boring," he said. And Nina got strawberry because it was pink and she liked pink. They sat outside even though it was cold, the kids at one table and the adults at another, close enough to supervise but far enough for privacy. "This is nice," Lucas said. "It is. I was terrified, you know, that you'd hate this, that the kids wouldn't get along, that I'd say something stupid and ruin it." "Did you say something stupid?" "Probably. I usually do." Nina bumped her shoulder against his. "You're doing fine." "Yeah?" "Yeah." They finished their ice cream as the sun set, the sky going orange and purple, the streetlights flickering on. The kids were laughing about something, heads together like they'd been friends for years instead of hours. Lucas's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, silenced it. "Work?" Nina asked. "Yeah, always work." "You should get it if you need to." "I don't need to. Not right now." He looked at her. "This matters more." Something warm spread through Nina's chest. "You're getting better at this honest thing." "I have a good teacher." They walked back toward the bus stop, the kids running ahead again, their voices carrying in the cold evening air. Lucas walked close enough that their shoulders kept brushing, and Nina let herself lean into it, just a little. At the bus stop, Evan tugged on Lucas's sleeve. "Dad, can we give them a ride? The bus takes forever." Lucas looked at Nina. "We can, if you want. No pressure." Nina hesitated. The bus did take forever, and it was cold, and Jamie was already yawning. "Okay," she said, "but nothing ridiculous. No limo, no driver, just a regular car." "I have a regular car." "Do you, though?" Lucas grinned. "It's a sedan.
4 doors, very boring. The sedan turned out to be a BMW, which was not boring by any stretch of Nina's definition, but at least it wasn't a Bentley or whatever rich people drove. The interior smelled like leather and something expensive she couldn't identify. Jamie was asleep before they made it 3 blocks. Evan was explaining something about black holes, and Nina half listened while watching the city slide past the window.
Lucas drove carefully, like he was hyper-aware of his precious cargo. His hand rested on the center console, and Nina let her hand drift over, let their fingers tangle together again. "This okay?" he asked quietly. "Yeah, this is okay." They pulled up to Nina's apartment building, shabby even in the dark, with its peeling paint and broken security gate. Nina felt a flash of embarrassment, seeing it through Lucas's eyes. But he just put the car in park and looked at her. "Thank you for tonight," he said. "I should be thanking you. You paid for everything." "Nina?" "What?" "Let me do nice things for you without turning it into a transaction. Please." She wanted to argue, wanted to insist on paying him back, on keeping things equal, on not owing anyone anything. But the look in his eyes stopped her. "Okay," she said. "Thank you. Tonight was really nice. Can we do it again? Soon?" "Yeah, I'd like that." In the back seat, Evan had fallen asleep too, slumped against the window. 2 kids who'd met as strangers and ended as friends, which felt like some kind of miracle. Nina unbuckled Jamie carefully, got him into her arms even though he was getting too big for this. Lucas got out, came around to open her door, and she let him because arguing about it felt stupid. "I'll text you," he said. "You better." He kissed her cheek, quick, soft, barely there, and Nina felt it like a brand. Then she was climbing the stairs to her apartment, Jamie heavy in her arms, the taste of strawberry ice cream still on her tongue, and Lucas's touch still warm on her skin. Inside, she put Jamie to bed without changing him out of his clothes because he was dead asleep and she was tired. Then she collapsed on her own bed and stared at the ceiling, trying to process the night. Her phone buzzed. Text from Lucas. "Made it home. Evan's already asking when he can see Jamie again." Nina smiled, typed back, "Jamie's going to ask the same thing in the morning. What have we done? Created a monster friendship. No going back now. Guess we're stuck with each other." I can think of worse things to be stuck with. Nina felt herself grinning like an idiot at her phone. This was dangerous, this feeling, this hope, this terrifying possibility that maybe something good was happening. Another text. "I had a really good time tonight. Best Saturday I've had in years. Me too. Can I see you this week? Just us?" Nina thought about her schedule, all doubles, every day, barely time to breathe. But she wanted to see him, wanted it enough to make time even when there wasn't any. Wednesday. "I'm off at 6. We could get coffee. At Moonbeam? Somewhere else. Let's go somewhere new. I know a place. I'll pick you up at 6:30? "No picking up. I'll meet you there. You're really bad at letting people take care of you. I'm really good at taking care of myself. There's a difference." "Fair point. I'll send you the address." "Okay." "Night, Lucas." "Night, Nina." She plugged her phone in, turned off the light, and lay there in the dark listening to the sounds of her building. The couple fighting next door, the baby crying 2 floors up, the constant hum of the city that never quite went silent. A month ago, she'd been alone, working, surviving, getting through each day. And now there was this man, this impossible man with his money and his sadness and his kid who got along with her kid, and Nina didn't know what to do with any of it, but she wanted to find out. Wednesday, Lucas sent her an address to a coffee shop in a neighborhood Nina had never been to. Not fancy, the text assured her, just good coffee and actual quiet. Nina showed up 10 minutes late because the bus hit traffic and her hair wouldn't cooperate, and she'd changed shirts twice before giving up. Lucas was already there, sitting at a corner table, and he stood when he saw her with that same uncertain smile that made her heart do stupid things. "You made it," he said. "Sorry I'm late. Bus was a nightmare." "You're fine. I just got here." A lie, probably, but a nice one. The coffee was actually good, which surprised her. She'd gotten used to serving terrible coffee and drinking worse. This tasted like someone cared about what they were making. "So," Lucas said. "How was your week?" "Exhausting. Yours?" "Same. Fired someone. Hated it. Spent 2 days feeling guilty." "Why'd you fire them?" "Embezzlement. He was stealing from the company, still felt bad about it. That's because you're a good person. I'm really not. Good people don't have $3 billion while other people can't afford to eat. Nina paused, cup halfway to her lips. You think about that a lot? The money thing? All the time. How do I justify having this much when... He stopped, shook his head. Sorry, you didn't sign up for my existential crisis. Maybe I did. Maybe that's part of knowing you. Lucas looked at her, something vulnerable in his expression. I don't know how to fix it. The inequality thing. I donate, I pay well, I try to be ethical. But it still feels like I'm playing with monopoly money while people are actually struggling. You gave my son a scholarship. That's one kid. There are millions of kids. Yeah, but you can't save everyone. You can just do what you can. Is it enough? I don't know. Is anything ever enough? They sat with that question, the weight of it, the impossibility of a good answer. Outside, people walked past the window, each of them carrying their own version of enough or not enough. Can I tell you something? Nina said. Always. I used to resent people like you, rich people, people who had everything and still complained. I'd see them in the cafe, dropping $50 on fancy drinks while I was counting quarters for bus fare, and I'd think they had no idea what real problems were. That's fair. But then I met you, and you were sad in this way that money couldn't fix, and I realized everyone's struggling with something. It just looks different depending on what you have. Lucas reached across the table, took her hand. Thank you for saying that. I'm not saying your problems are the same as mine. They're not. You'll never worry about making rent, but lonely is lonely. Grief is grief. Being a single parent is hard whether you're rich or poor. Just harder when you're poor. Yeah, a lot harder. But you get that. That's why the scholarship matters. You see it. They finished their coffee talking about smaller things. Jamie's science project, Evan's upcoming piano recital, the fact that Lucas had never seen Star Wars, and Nina was personally offended. How have you never seen Star Wars? She demanded. I don't know. It just never happened. We're fixing this. Movie night. Soon. Is that a date? That's me educating you on basic cultural literacy. Lucas grinned. Can it be both? I guess it can be both. Walking back to where Nina had parked her dying car, she'd driven tonight, determined to meet him on equal terms. Lucas caught her hand, pulled her to a stop. What? She asked. Nothing, He looked at her like he was trying to memorize her face. I really like you. I know we're going slow and I'm respecting that, but I wanted you to know, in case it wasn't obvious. Nina's heart was pounding. It's obvious. Good. I really like you too. Even though you've never seen Star Wars and you tip too much and you overthink everything? Especially because I overthink everything? Maybe. He kissed her then. Not on the cheek this time. Actually kissed her, soft and careful, like he was afraid she might break. Nina kissed him back, and it felt like falling and flying at the same time. When they pulled apart, Lucas looked dazed. Wow. Yeah. Can I do that again? You better. So he did. And this time Nina let herself fall into it. Let herself stop thinking about all the ways this could go wrong and just feel all the ways it was going right. They stood there on the sidewalk, kissing like teenagers, and Nina didn't care who saw. Didn't care that her car was making weird noises, or that she had a double shift tomorrow, or that this whole thing was probably going to get complicated. Right now, it was just them. Just this. And that was enough. The next few weeks were a blur of stolen moments. Coffee dates that turned into dinner dates. Movie nights with the kids where everyone fell asleep before the credits. Text messages at 2 a.m. when Lucas couldn't sleep and Nina was coming off a late shift. They were figuring it out. Not perfectly. Nina still felt weird when Lucas paid for things, still insisted on splitting checks, even though it was obvious he didn't care. Lucas still sometimes forgot that Nina couldn't just leave work early or take random days off, that her life had constraints, his didn't. But they were trying, and that counted for something. Then came the afternoon that changed everything. Nina was at the cafe, middle of a Tuesday shift, when a man walked in. Expensive suit, polished shoes, the kind of guy who looked like he'd never set foot in a place like Moonbeam before. He walked straight to the counter, ordered nothing, and looked at Nina with an expression she couldn't read. Nina Carter. Yeah? My name is Richard Hale. I'm Lucas's father. Nina felt something cold drop in her stomach. Okay. I'd like to talk to you, if you have a moment. I'm working. It's important. Nina glanced at her coworker, who shrugged. The cafe was dead. Mid-afternoon lull. Fine, 5 minutes. They sat at a table near the window, the same table where Lucas used to sit every day. Richard Hale folded his hands on the surface, looked at her with eyes exactly like his son's, but colder. My son is making a mistake, he said. Nina felt her spine straighten. Excuse me? You seem like a nice woman, hard-working, but you're not right for Lucas. Surely you see that. I don't see that at all. He has responsibilities, a company to run, a certain image to maintain. Dating He paused, like he was choosing his words carefully. A barista with a child complicates things. Nina's hands clenched under the table. Did Lucas send you here? No, he doesn't know I'm here, and I'd prefer to keep it that way. Then why are you here? To make you an offer. Richard pulled out an envelope, set it on the table. There's a check in there, significant amount. Enough to change your life, pay off any debts, set up a college fund for your son, buy a house, whatever you want. Nina stared at the envelope like it might bite her. And in exchange? You walk away, clean break. Tell Lucas it's not working, that you realize the gap between your worlds is too big. He'll be hurt, but he'll move on. You're offering me money to break up with your son. I'm offering you financial security in exchange for doing what's best for everyone involved. Nina laughed. It came out harsh, ugly. You have no idea who I am, do you? I know exactly who you are. I had you investigated. You what? Background check. Financial history. It's standard procedure when someone gets close to my son. You're in debt, your car is dying, you work 60 hours a week and still barely make rent. This, he tapped the envelope, solves all of that. Nina stood up. Her chair scraped loud against the floor. Get out. Ms. Carter, get out of my cafe. And tell Lucas his father is an asshole. Richard Hale stood slowly, picked up the envelope. You're making a mistake. That pride of yours won't pay your bills. My pride is the only thing I've got that money can't buy. So yeah, I'm keeping it. Now leave before I throw you out myself. He left. The envelope stayed on the table. Nina stared at it for a long moment. Then she picked it up, walked to the trash, and threw it away without opening it. Her hands were shaking. Her whole body was shaking. She pulled out her phone, texted Lucas. We need to talk. Tonight. 3 dots appeared immediately. What's wrong? Just come to my place. After Jamie's asleep. 9? Okay. You're scaring me. I'm sorry. Just come. The rest of her shift was a blur. Nina served coffee, wiped tables, smiled at customers, and tried not to think about Richard Hale's cold eyes, or the check she'd thrown away, or how much money had probably been in that envelope. Enough to change your life, he'd said. Maybe it would have. But not in any way that mattered. Lucas arrived at 9:15, looking worried. Nina had been pacing her tiny living room for the past hour, wearing a path in the already threadbare carpet. Jamie was asleep in his room, door closed, and the apartment felt too small and too quiet all at once. What happened? Lucas asked the moment she opened the door. Your text. You never text like that. Are you okay? Is Jamie okay? We're fine. Come in. He stepped inside and Nina closed the door behind him, locked it. Like that would keep the rest of the world out. Your father came to see me today. Lucas went very still. What? At the cafe. This afternoon. He introduced himself. We had a conversation. What kind of conversation? Nina crossed her arms, suddenly cold despite the radiator clanking away in the corner. The kind where he told me I'm not good enough for you. The kind where he offered me money to walk away. The color drained from Lucas's face. He didn't. He did. Had a whole envelope ready. Didn't even tell me how much. Just said it was enough to change my life. Did you? Lucas stopped, swallowed hard. Did you take it? Nina looked at him. Really looked at him. At the fear in his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, the way he was bracing for her to say yes. I threw it in the trash without opening it. Then I told him to get out and that he was an asshole. Lucas exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for years. Okay, good. I mean, Not good that he did that. That's not good at all. But good that you... He ran his hands through his hair. I'm gonna kill him. Don't. He's not worth it. He came to your workplace. He tried to pay you off. That's... Lucas was pacing now, angry energy radiating off him. That's so far over the line I can't even see the line anymore. Lucas. He had no right. No right to talk to you, to offer you money, to make you feel like you're not... He stopped, turned to face her. You know you're not what he said, right? You know you're more than good enough? Do I? Nina heard her voice crack. Hated it. Because he had me investigated. Did you know that? Full background check. Knows about my debt, my car, how much I make. Probably knows more about my life than I remember myself. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. He said it's standard procedure when someone gets close to you. Lucas looked sick. It used to be, years ago. When I was younger and stupider and let him control everything, I told him to stop, told him I was done with that. Obviously, he didn't listen. What else don't I know? What else is hiding out there waiting to ambush me? Nothing. I promise. Nothing. My father, he's not part of my life anymore. Not really. We work together because I can't completely cut him out of the company without destroying everything my grandfather built. But we're not close. We barely talk. Well, he's talking now, and he thinks I'm a mistake you're making. Lucas crossed the small space between them, took her hands. His were shaking slightly. You're not a mistake. You're the best thing that's happened to me in years, maybe ever. Your father doesn't think so. My father thought my wife was a mistake too, thought she was too emotional, too impractical, didn't come to our wedding. And you know what? She was the best person I ever knew, so his opinion means exactly nothing to me. Nina felt tears burning behind her eyes. I don't fit into your world, Lucas. You know I don't. Every time we go somewhere nice, I feel like everyone's staring at me. Like they all know I don't belong. And maybe they're right. They're not right. Your father thinks... My father is a miserable old man who thinks money is the only thing that matters. He's been alone since my mother left him 20 years ago because he chose work over everything else. He has no friends. No one who actually cares about him. Just people who want things from him. Is that the life you think I want? I don't know what you want. You. I want you. Lucas's hands tightened on hers. I want this. Us. Whatever we're building. I want movie nights with our kids and terrible coffee at Moonbeam and you giving me shit when I tip too much. I want real, and you're the most real thing in my life. Nina pulled her hands away, wrapped her arms around herself. This is hard, Lucas. Harder than I thought it would be. I can't just show up to your life and pretend the money doesn't matter. It matters. It changes everything. It doesn't have to. But it does. Your father proved that today. He looked at me and saw someone he could buy. Someone disposable, and maybe he's not wrong. Don't say that. Why not? It's true, isn't it? I'm convenient now, but what happens when this gets serious? When you have to bring me to company events or introduce me to your friends? What happens when people start asking questions about the barista dating Lucas Hale? I don't care what people ask. You should. You have a company, a reputation, a son who's going to grow up in your world, not mine. What happens when Evan's friend's parents find out his dad is dating? She stopped, shook her head. I'm so tired, Lucas. I'm tired of worrying about this, about whether I'm good enough or rich enough or polished enough. Lucas looked at her for a long moment. Then he sat down on her worn couch, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. I don't know how to fix this, he said quietly. I don't know how to make you believe that none of that matters to me. Maybe it should matter. Maybe your father's right and we're both just pretending this can work when it can't. Is that what you think? Nina sat down next to him, leaving space between them that felt like a canyon. I don't know what I think anymore. This afternoon I was happy. We were good. And then your father showed up and reminded me that there's a whole world out there waiting to tell me I'm not enough. You are enough. For you, maybe. But for your life? I don't know. They sat in silence. The radiator clanked. Someone's TV blared through the wall. Normal sounds of Nina's normal life that felt anything but normal right now. What do you want me to do? Lucas asked finally. Tell me what you need, and I'll do it. I need you to understand that this is scary for me. That I've spent my whole life being told that people like you don't end up with people like me. And today, your father confirmed everything I was afraid of. My father is one person, one wrong person. But he's not the only one who's going to think it. You know he's not. Lucas turned to look at her. You're right. There will be other people. Other Richard Hales who think they know what's best for me. People who'll judge you, judge us. And I can't control that. I can't make the world fair or make people see you the way I see you. Then what can you do? I can choose you anyway. Every time. Every day. I can tell every single person who has an opinion about my life to mind their own business. I can make it clear that you're not going anywhere unless you want to be. I can fight for this even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Nina felt something crack in her chest. What if that's not enough? Then we'll figure something else out. But, Nina, he reached for her hand again, and this time she let him take it. Don't let my father win. Don't let him make you think you're not worth fighting for, because you are. You're worth everything. She wanted to believe him, wanted it so badly it hurt. I need time, she said, to think, to process. Today was a lot. Okay. How much time? I don't know. A few days? A week? I just need to clear my head. Lucas nodded, even though she could see it was killing him. Okay. Take the time you need. But Nina, I'm not going anywhere. When you're ready to talk, I'll be here. He stood up, and Nina walked him to the door. In the doorway, he turned back. My father was wrong about you. About us. But I get why it shook you. I get why you need space. Just don't disappear on me, please. I won't. Promise? I promise. He kissed her forehead, gentle and sad, and then he was gone. Nina locked the door behind him and slid down to sit on the floor, back against the wood, and let herself cry. She'd known this wouldn't be easy, had known from the start that dating Lucas came with complications. But knowing something in theory and facing it in reality were different things. Richard Hale had made it real, made it concrete, made her see exactly what she'd be walking into if this continued, and she didn't know if she was strong enough for it. The next few days were strange. Lucas texted her good morning and good night, but didn't push for more, didn't ask to see her, didn't show up at the cafe, gave her the space she'd asked for even though she could feel him wanting to close the distance. Jamie asked about Evan twice, and Nina made vague promises about playdates soon. She couldn't tell her 8-year-old that she was having a crisis about whether they could keep seeing the Hales because of class differences and complicated family dynamics. That was too much for a kid. On Thursday, Maria cornered her during a shift change. Okay, what's going on with you? Nothing, I'm fine. You're not fine, you've been weird all week. Is it the billionaire boyfriend? Nina winced. Don't call him that. Why not? That's what he is. It's more complicated than that. Maria leaned against the counter, gave her that look that said she wasn't going anywhere until Nina talked. Complicated how? So Nina told her. About Richard Hale and the envelope and the way it had made her feel small and disposable. About how she didn't know if she was strong enough to deal with a lifetime of people looking at her like she didn't belong. Maria listened to the whole thing, then said, That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Excuse me? You're gonna let some old rich guy tell you what you deserve? You? Nina Carter, who works doubles without complaining, who raised a kid alone, who builds her whole life around making sure Jamie has everything he needs. You're gonna let that guy make you feel like you're not enough? It's not that simple. Yeah, it is. Either you love the guy or you don't. Either he's worth fighting for or he's not. The money stuff, the class stuff, that's noise. That's other people's problems. Don't make it yours. But it affects me. It affects Jamie. So does you being happy. So does Jamie seeing his mom choose something good instead of running away from it because it's scary. Nina stared at her. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just don't listen. Maria pushed off the counter. Look, I'm not saying it'll be easy. Rich people are exhausting. But that Lucas guy? He looks at you like you hung the moon. And his dad being an asshole doesn't change that. Don't let the asshole win. After Maria left, Nina stood behind the counter in the quiet cafe and thought about what she'd said. About choosing happy instead of choosing safe. About not letting Richard Hale win. She pulled out her phone, looked at Lucas's last text from this morning. Hope you're having a good day. Miss you. She typed, can we talk? Tonight? The response was immediate. Yes. Where? My place. After Jamie's asleep. I'll be there. Nina spent the rest of her shift trying to figure out what she wanted to say. By the time Lucas showed up at 9:30, she still didn't have it all worked out. But maybe that was okay. Maybe she didn't need perfect words. Maybe she just needed honest ones. Hi, Lucas said when she opened the door. He looked tired, worried, like he'd been preparing himself for bad news. Hi, come in. They sat on the couch, same spot as last time, but closer now. Nina took his hand, felt how cold it was. I've been thinking, she started, about what your father said, about whether we can make this work. Lucas tensed. And I realized something. Your father was trying to make me feel small, trying to convince me that I don't deserve you, that I should take the money and walk away because that's all I'm worth. You're worth everything. Let me finish. Nina squeezed his hand. He was trying to make me feel small, and for a few days, it worked. I felt small. Felt like maybe he was right, and I was fooling myself thinking I could be part of your world. Nina, but then I thought about why I fell for you in the first place, and it wasn't your money. It wasn't your fancy car or your penthouse or any of that. It was you. The guy who sat alone on his birthday looking broken. The guy who brought my kid books about dinosaurs just because. The guy who tips too much and overthinks everything and looks at me like I matter. Lucas's eyes were bright. You do matter. I know, and that's what your father doesn't get. He thinks money is all that matters. He thinks he can buy people, buy outcomes, buy his son's happiness. But he can't. Because the things that actually matter, kindness, connection, love, those aren't for sale. So what are you saying? Nina took a breath. I'm saying I'm scared. I'm saying this is going to be hard, and there are going to be more Richard Hales out there judging us. I'm saying I don't know if I'm strong enough to deal with all of it. You're the strongest person I know. I'm saying all of that. But I'm also saying I don't want to walk away. I don't want to let your father win. I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering what could have happened if I'd been brave enough to try. Lucas pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. You're sure? No, I'm terrified. But I'm sure about you. About us. About wanting to figure this out together. I'm terrified too. Just so you know, I'm terrified of screwing this up, of you realizing I'm not worth all the complications. Nina pulled back to look at him. You're worth it. Even with your asshole father and your complicated life and your $3 billion that make everything weird. Only $3 billion. Let's not exaggerate. She laughed, and it felt good. Felt like breathing again after holding her breath for days. I need you to do something for me, she said. Anything. Stand up to your father, not for me, for you. Tell him he doesn't get to run your life anymore, that he doesn't get to investigate people you care about or try to buy them off. Draw a line. Lucas nodded. I will. Tomorrow. I'll go to his office and make it clear that if he ever comes near you again, he's done. Out of my life completely. You do that? I should have done it years ago. I've been letting him have power he doesn't deserve because it was easier than fighting. But you're right. It's time to draw a line. They kissed then, and it felt like coming home. Like finding something she hadn't known she was looking for. I missed you, Lucas said against her lips. These last few days were awful. I missed you too, but I think I needed them. Needed to remember why I was doing this. And why are you doing this? Nina smiled. Because you're worth fighting for, even when it's scary. They spent the next hour just talking, about Lucas's plan to confront his father, about how to handle future situations when people judged them, about introducing their kids to the reality of their relationship instead of tiptoeing around it. Jamie asks about Evan constantly, Nina said, wants to know when they can hang out again. Evan too. He talks about Jamie like they've been friends forever. Should we tell them that we're serious about this? I think they already know. Kids aren't stupid. No. But there's knowing and there's making it official. What if it freaks them out? Lucas considered this. What if it doesn't? What if they're just happy we're happy? That feels too easy. Maybe easy is okay sometimes. So the next Saturday, they had both kids over for dinner at Lucas's place. First time Nina had seen it, and it was exactly as overwhelming as she'd expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows, art that probably cost more than her yearly salary, a kitchen bigger than her entire apartment. But Evan gave her a tour like she was visiting a friend's house, showing her his room and his books and the telescope Lucas had bought him for his birthday. And Jamie ran around with his eyes huge, asking questions about everything. And slowly the house started to feel less like a museum and more like a place where people actually lived. Over pizza, because Lucas had learned his lesson about keeping things comfortable, they told the kids. So Evan, Jamie, Lucas started, glancing at Nina for support. Nina and I have been spending a lot of time together, and we wanted you guys to know that we're, dating, Nina supplied. We're dating. Officially? Jamie grinned. We know? You know? Yeah, you hold hands and you smile at each other weird. Evan nodded seriously. It's pretty obvious. Lucas looked at Nina. Nina tried not to laugh. Okay then. So you guys are cool with it? Why wouldn't we be? Evan asked. Well, it changes things. You'll be seeing more of each other, more of us together. It might be weird. The only weird thing is you guys acting like we're going to be upset, Jamie said through a mouthful of pizza. Can we go play video games now? Yeah, can we? Evan was already standing. Sure, Lucas said, still looking baffled. Go ahead. The kids ran off, leaving the adults sitting there in the fancy dining room with its crystal chandelier and its view of the city. That went well, Nina said. Too well. I was prepared for questions, concerns. Evan's usually so analytical about everything. Maybe they're just happy, like you said. Maybe. Lucas pulled her close, kissed her temple. This is really happening, isn't it? We're really doing this. Looks like it. I'm terrified. Me too. But good terrified? Nina thought about it, about the kids laughing in the other room, about Lucas's arm around her, about the future she was choosing instead of the safe, small life she'd been living. Yeah, she said. Good terrified. Monday morning, Lucas went to his father's office. Nina didn't go with him. This was his fight. But he texted her updates. Going in now. Wish me luck. Then, 20 minutes later, he's being Richard, trying to justify it. Another 10 minutes, told him he's out, no more involvement in my personal life. He's furious. And finally, it's done. He threatened to sell his shares. I told him to go ahead. Felt good. Felt really good. Nina called him on her lunch break. You okay? Yeah. Actually, yeah, I should have done that years ago. What did he say? At the end? That I was making the biggest mistake of my life. That you'd leave eventually, and I'd regret burning bridges with family. The usual manipulation tactics. You don't believe him? No. For the first time in my life, I really don't. He's been wrong about everything that matters. Why would this be different? Nina felt something warm spread through her chest. I'm proud of you. Yeah? Yeah, that took guts. I had good motivation, couldn't let him think he could mess with my girlfriend. Girlfriend, huh? When did that become official? Saturday, when our kids rolled their eyes at us and went to play video games. I figured if they're accepting it, it's real. Nina laughed. Solid logic. I learned from the best. You want to have dinner tonight? All four of us? Celebrate me finally growing a spine? I have to work until 8. Then 8:30. I'll order in. Something good. Not pizza. We had that Saturday. Chinese? Perfect. That night, sitting around Nina's tiny kitchen table because Lucas insisted on coming to her place this time, eating lo mein straight from the containers because Nina didn't have enough plates, both kids talking over each other about their days, Nina felt something click into place. This was it. This was what she'd been fighting for, not the money or the fancy houses or any of that, just this. People who cared about each other, people choosing each other, family, however it was built. Lucas caught her eye across the table and smiled, and Nina knew he was thinking the same thing. It wasn't perfect. Nina's apartment was too small for 4 people. The table wobbled. The lo mein was already getting cold. But it was real. It was theirs, and that was enough. 3 months later, Nina's car finally died. Not dramatically, it just refused to start one Tuesday morning, making a clicking sound that the mechanic said meant the transmission was shot. Repair cost more than the car was worth. Nina stood in the parking lot of the garage, staring at the piece of paper with the estimate, and felt the weight of it settle on her shoulders. She called Lucas. He answered on the first ring like he always did when she called during work hours.
Hey, what's up? My car died. Is it fixable? Technically, yes. Practically, no. It would cost $4,000 to fix a car worth maybe $1,500. There was a pause. Nina could hear him thinking, could practically see him opening his mouth to offer to buy her a new car, then closing it again because they'd had that conversation already. 3 times. She didn't want him buying her things. Didn't want to feel like she owed him. What are you going to do? He asked instead. Bus for now. Figure out the rest later. I've got some savings. Maybe I can find something used that actually runs. Okay, you need a ride anywhere today? No, I'm good. Maria's giving me a lift home after my shift. You sure? Yeah, I'm sure. Another pause, then, Nina? Yeah? I know you don't want me just throwing money at your problems. I get that. But if you need help, actual help, not me steamrolling over your independence, will you ask? Please? Nina felt something soften in her chest. Yeah, I will. I promise. Okay. Call me later? Always do. She hung up and looked at her dead car, at the mechanic waiting for an answer, at the life that kept throwing problems at her that money could solve but pride wouldn't let her take the easy way out of. Junk it, she told the mechanic. I'll figure something else out. The bus schedule meant Nina had to leave for work an hour earlier and got home an hour later. It meant Jamie had to wait at the cafe longer after school, doing homework in the corner while she finished her shifts. It meant she was more tired, more stretched, more aware of how precarious everything was. Lucas offered to drive her, every day. She said no every time because accepting felt like sliding down a slope she couldn't climb back up. If she let him drive her to work, what was next? Moving in together because it was convenient? Letting him pay her bills because she was always there anyway? She'd fought too hard for her independence to hand it over now, even to someone who loved her. And he did love her. He'd said it 2 weeks ago, quietly, after both kids had fallen asleep during a movie and they were carrying them to their respective beds. Just whispered it like he couldn't help himself. Nina had said it back because it was true, because denying it would have been lying, because she'd stopped being able to imagine her life without him in it. But love didn't solve everything. Love didn't make the bus come faster, or make her shifts shorter, or erase the reality that they lived in different worlds. On Friday night, exhausted from a double shift and 2 bus transfers, Nina came home to find an envelope taped to her apartment door, her name written across it in handwriting she recognized now. Inside was a single piece of paper and a set of car keys. The paper read, "Before you get mad, hear me out. This isn't a gift. It's a loan. 0 interest. Pay me back whenever you can, or don't. I bought it used from a guy at work who was upgrading. It's 10 years old, has 100,000 miles, and the radio only gets AM stations. The heat works, though. And it's safe. That's all I care about. That you're safe. The title's in your name. It's yours to keep, sell, drive into a lake if you're really mad at me. But please don't take the bus anymore. Please let me help with this one thing. I love you. L." Nina stood in her doorway holding the keys and tried to decide if she was furious or grateful or some complicated mix of both. She called him. "Lucas? Before you yell, where's the car?" "Parking spot 47, ground level." "I'm coming over. We need to talk." "I know. I'll be here." Nina asked Maria to watch Jamie, said it was an emergency, which it kind of was, and took the bus one more time across town to Lucas's building. The doorman recognized her now, let her up without question. She rode the elevator to the penthouse trying to organize her thoughts into something coherent, instead of just angry, grateful, confused noise. Lucas opened the door before she could knock. "Hey, you bought me a car." "I loaned you a car. There's a difference." "Is there? Really?" Nina pushed past him into the apartment. Evan was at a friend's house. Lucas had texted her earlier, so they were alone. Good. This conversation needed privacy. "Yes, the difference is you own it, not me. It's titled in your name. You can do whatever you want with it. Except give it back." "Well, yeah, that would be stupid. You need a car." Nina turned to face him. "You can't just make decisions for me. We've talked about this." "I know, and I'm sorry. But Nina, you're exhausted. You're working yourself into the ground. The bus is adding 2 hours to your day. 2 hours you could be sleeping or spending with Jamie or just existing as a person instead of being in transit. That's not your problem to solve. Yes, it is. Because I love you. Because watching you struggle when I could help is killing me. Because there's a car sitting in my building's garage that nobody's using, and you're taking 3 buses to get to work. It's not about the car, Lucas. It's about you deciding what I need and then just doing it without asking. You're right. I should have asked, but you would have said no. Exactly. I would have said no because I don't want to owe you. You don't owe me anything. It's a loan. No interest, no timeline. Pay me back in 20 years or never. I don't care. Nina sat down on his expensive couch, suddenly exhausted. You don't get it. Lucas sat next to her, careful to leave space. Then help me get it. Explain it to me. My whole life, I've had to fight for everything. Every single thing I have, I earned. Nobody gave me anything. And yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. But it's mine. I did it myself. And if I start letting you solve my problems, where does it stop? When do I become just another person who needs Lucas Hale's money? You're not just another person. You're the person I love. And love means wanting to help, wanting to make things easier when I can. But I don't want easy. I want honest. I want equal. And we're not equal when you can just buy solutions to all my problems. Lucas was quiet for a moment. Then, you're right. We're not equal. We're never going to be equal financially. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, and you're working doubles to make rent. That's the reality. And I hate it. I hate that you have to struggle when I could make it stop with a phone call. But you don't want me to do that, so I won't. Except when it's about safety. Except when it's about you being so tired you can barely stand. That's where I draw my line. You don't get to draw lines in my life. Then where's the middle ground? Tell me how to do this. Tell me how to be with you and watch you struggle and not help. Because I'm trying, Nina. I'm really trying to respect your boundaries. But this? You on the bus for 2 hours a day when there's a solution? I can't do nothing. I can't. Nina felt tears burning. I don't know what the middle ground is. Lucas moved closer, pulled her into his arms. She let him because she was too tired to fight and too scared to let go. The car is yours, he said against her hair. Not a gift, not charity. A loan from someone who loves you to someone who needs reliable transportation. You can pay me back $1 a month for the rest of our lives if that makes you feel better. But please use it. Please stop making your life harder than it has to be just to prove you can. Nina cried into his shirt, soaking the expensive fabric with tears and probably snot and all the exhaustion she'd been carrying for months. Years. Forever. I'm scared, she admitted. I'm scared that if I start accepting help, I'll lose myself. I'll become someone who needs you instead of someone who chooses you. You'll always choose me. The car doesn't change that. Money doesn't change that. You're the strongest person I know. A car with a crappy radio isn't going to make you weak. She laughed despite herself. The radio really only gets AM? I didn't lie about that part. It's pretty terrible, but the heat works, and it's safe. That's what matters. Nina pulled back to look at him. If I take it, if I use it, we're writing up a contract, a real one, payment terms, interest if that makes you feel better, something official so I know I'm paying you back. Okay, we can do that. And you have to promise me something. Anything. No more surprise solutions. No more deciding what I need and then making it appear. If you want to help, you ask first. Even if you think I'll say no, especially if you think I'll say no. Deal? Lucas nodded. Deal. I promise. No more ambushes. Okay. Nina took a shaky breath. Okay. Show me the car. They went down to the parking garage, and the car was exactly what he'd described. 10 years old, kind of ugly, with a dent in the passenger door and an AM radio that crackled with static. But the engine started smooth when Lucas turned the key, and the heat did work. And when Nina sat in the driver's seat, it felt like possibility. It's perfect, she said. It's a piece of junk, but it runs. No, it's perfect. She looked at him. Thank you for caring enough to push, for understanding when I push back, for being patient with me even when I'm being stubborn. Lucas leaned through the window, kissed her softly. You're not stubborn. You're self-sufficient. There's a difference. I'm definitely stubborn. Okay, yeah. You're really stubborn, but I love that about you.
Nina drove the car home that night, and it felt like freedom, like taking back hours of her life that had been eaten by bus schedules and transfers and waiting in the cold, like accepting help without losing herself. She wrote up a contract the next day, proper legal language, payment terms, everything official. Lucas signed it without reading it, which made her make him read it, which made him laugh and sign it again. They were learning each other, learning how to be together across the gap between their worlds. The holidays came. Lucas asked Nina and Jamie to spend Christmas with him and Evan. Nina almost said no. Christmas felt big, felt like making a statement, but Jamie was so excited about the idea that she couldn't bring herself to refuse. Christmas morning at Lucas's penthouse was strange and wonderful. The tree was enormous, professionally decorated, the kind of thing Nina had only seen in magazines. But underneath it were presents that felt personal. Books Jamie had mentioned wanting, a new jacket for Nina that wasn't designer, just warm, things that said Lucas had been paying attention. Nina's presents felt small in comparison. She'd made cookies because that's what she could afford, and gotten Evan a book about Mars because he'd been talking about it nonstop, and given Lucas a photo frame with a picture of all four of them from their last pizza night. Candid shot Maria had taken when Nina wasn't looking. Lucas held the frame like it was precious. "This is my favorite present I've ever gotten." "It's a $15 frame." "It's us. That's worth everything." They spent the day in pajamas, eating too much food, watching movies the kids picked. Evan and Jamie argued about whether Home Alone or Elf was the better Christmas movie. Lucas fell asleep during both. Nina took pictures of everything, trying to capture the feeling of this day, this family they were building. That night, after the kids were asleep in Evan's room, Jamie was sleeping over, another new thing. Lucas and Nina sat by the window, looking out at the city lights. "This was a good day," Lucas said. "It was. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for something to go wrong, for you to realize this is too complicated and walk away." Nina took his hand. "I'm not walking away. We've been through too much. Your father tried to pay me off, and I'm still here. I threw away your car keys and then took them back. I'm pretty committed at this point." "Good, because I'm pretty committed too." He paused. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "Where do you see this going? Us, I mean, long term." Nina's heart started beating faster. "I don't know. Where do you see it going?" "I see us figuring it out. Maybe you and Jamie moving in here eventually. Maybe us getting a place together that's ours, not mine. Maybe getting married someday if that's something you want. Maybe just keeping on like this, taking it day by day. I don't need perfect. I just need you." That's a lot of maybes. "I know. Too much? Too fast?" Nina thought about it. About her tiny apartment that Jamie was outgrowing. About the life she'd built that was good but small. About the possibility of something bigger, something shared, something that terrified and excited her in equal measure. "Not too much," she said. "Not too fast, just right amount of scary." Lucas laughed. "Good scary or bad scary?" "Good scary. The kind where you jump even though you're afraid because the landing might be worth it." "I love you. I love you too." They kissed as the city glittered below them, and Nina felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Not in the penthouse or the expensive life or any of that. Just here, with him, building something real. 6 months later, Richard Hale had a heart attack. Not fatal, but serious enough that Lucas got the call at 3 a.m. and drove to the hospital with his jaw set and his hands tight on the wheel. Nina went with him, didn't ask, just got in the car when he started it, sat beside him in the silence of pre-dawn streets. "You don't have to do this," Lucas said. "Yeah, I do. You shouldn't be alone." "He doesn't deserve my concern." "Maybe not, but you deserve to not carry this by yourself." At the hospital, Richard looked small in the bed. Old, hooked up to machines that beeped steadily. He saw Lucas come in, saw Nina behind him, and something flickered across his face. "You brought her," he said, voice rough from the oxygen tube. "Yeah, I brought her. Nina's my family now. She goes where I go." Richard closed his eyes. For a moment, Nina thought he might have fallen asleep. Then, "I was wrong about her." Lucas went very still. "What?" "That day at the cafe, the envelope. I was wrong. She threw it away. I had someone watch. Wanted to see if she'd take it. She didn't even open it, just threw it straight in the trash and told you about it. That's... He trailed off. That's not something you can buy. Nina felt Lucas's hand find hers. I'm not asking you to like me, Nina said quietly, but I'm not going anywhere. So we can keep doing this, the fighting and the resentment, or we can try something different. What's different? Civil. We don't have to be friends, but we can be civil. For Lucas, for the kids. Richard looked at her for a long moment, then at Lucas. You really love her? More than anything, and she makes you happy. She does. Then I was wrong, and He struggled with the word. Sorry, for interfering, for trying to control things that weren't mine to control. It wasn't a great apology. It was grudging and incomplete and clearly difficult for him to say, but it was something. Lucas nodded. Okay, thank you. They stayed for another hour until Richard fell asleep and the doctors assured them he was stable. Driving home in the morning light, Lucas was quiet. You okay? Nina asked. I don't know. That was weird. Yeah. He apologized. My father actually apologized. I don't think I've ever heard him apologize for anything. Near-death experiences do that to people sometimes. Do you think he meant it? Nina considered. I think he meant it in the moment. Whether it sticks is different. But Lucas? You don't have to forgive him just because he's sick. You don't owe him that. I know, but maybe I want to try. Not for him, for me. So I'm not carrying around all this anger forever. That's fair. Just don't forget what he did. Don't let him pretend it didn't happen. I won't. We're doing civil, like you said. Not friends, just civil. Over the next few months, Richard made an effort. Small things. Asking about the kids, not commenting when Nina showed up to company events in dresses that didn't cost thousands of dollars, sending Jamie a birthday card. It wasn't warm. It probably never would be. But it was progress. And then one afternoon in September, Lucas showed up at Moonbeam during Nina's shift, looking nervous. What's wrong? She asked immediately. Nothing's wrong, but can you take a break? Just 10 minutes? Nina looked at Maria, who waved her off. Go. We're dead anyway. They sat at the table by the window, Lucas's table, where this whole thing had started with a blind date and birthday cake, and Nina seeing someone who needed kindness. I've been thinking, Lucas started. Oh, no. Hear me out. I've been thinking about what you said at Christmas, about maybes, about figuring things out. Okay. And I realized I don't want maybes anymore. I want definites. I want to know that you're coming home to the same place I am. That we're building a life together, not just visiting each other's lives. I want all of it, the good days and the hard days and everything in between. Nina's heart was pounding. Lucas, what are you saying? He pulled out a small box from his pocket, opened it. Inside was a ring, simple, beautiful, not ostentatiously expensive, but clearly meaningful. I'm saying marry me. Move in with me, or I'll move in with you, or we'll get a new place together. I don't care about the logistics. I just care about making this permanent, about being your family officially, not just in practice. Nina stared at the ring, at Lucas's hopeful, terrified face, at the cafe around them where everything had started. You're proposing to me at my work, in my cafe. It's where we met, where you brought me cake when I was nobody. Seemed right to come full circle. I'm in my work apron. I have coffee stains on my shirt. You look perfect. Nina felt tears starting. This is really bad timing. I have 6 more hours on my shift. So is that a yes? You didn't let me finish. This is really bad timing, and also I don't want a big wedding, and I'm scared of planning something huge and fancy, and Nina, is it a yes? She looked at him, at this man who'd walked into her cafe pretending to be someone else and ended up being exactly who she needed, who fought for them even when it was hard, who loved her son like his own, who was patient with her stubbornness and respected her strength and made her laugh even when she was exhausted. Yes, it's a yes. Obviously it's a yes. Lucas slid the ring onto her finger with shaking hands. Then he pulled her close and kissed her while Maria whooped from behind the counter and the few customers in the cafe clapped. You're sure? He asked against her lips. I'm terrified, but I'm sure. Good terrified? The best kind. They got married 3 months later. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. Evan was Lucas's best man. Jamie was the ring bearer and took his job very seriously. Nina wore a dress she actually liked instead of one that cost a fortune. Lucas cried during the vows, which made Nina cry, which made both kids roll their eyes. Richard showed up, sat in the back, didn't make a scene. It was enough. The reception was at a restaurant. Nice, but not fancy. The kind of place where kids could be kids and people could actually talk instead of just performing elegance. Lucas gave a speech about birthday cake and second chances. Nina gave one about learning to accept help without losing yourself. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Dancing with Lucas later, Nina thought about the path that had led them here. All the almost endings. All the moments when it would have been easier to walk away. All the times they'd chosen each other instead of choosing easy. Happy? Lucas asked. Terrified. But yeah, really happy. Still good terrified? The best kind. 6 months into the marriage, they bought a house. Not the penthouse, too big, too much, not really them, and not Nina's tiny apartment. Something in between, something that was theirs. 4 bedrooms, so the kids could each have their own space, and there was a guest room for when friends visited. A yard where Jamie and Evan could play. A kitchen that Nina actually wanted to cook in. Nothing ostentatious, nothing that screamed money. Just a home. Moving day was chaos, both kids running around, Lucas trying to direct the movers and doing it badly, Nina unpacking boxes and finding things in wrong rooms. But there was laughter, there was family, there was the life they'd built together, messy and imperfect and real. That night, after the kids were asleep in their new rooms and the movers were gone and half their stuff was still in boxes, Lucas and Nina sat on the floor of their bedroom drinking wine from coffee mugs because they couldn't find the wine glasses. "We did it," Lucas said. "We did. You know what I was thinking about today?" "What?" "That night at the cafe. My birthday. How I whispered happy birthday to me, like the saddest person alive. You were pretty sad." "I was. And then you brought me cake. And I thought it was just a nice moment, just kindness from a stranger. I didn't know it was going to change my whole life." Nina leaned against him. "I didn't know either. I just thought you looked like you needed cake." "I needed more than cake. I needed you. I needed this. I needed to remember what it felt like to be human." "You are human, flawed and messy and human. So are you. Yeah, so are we." They sat there in their new house, in their imperfect life, and Nina thought about the scholarship letter that had started all of this. The one Lucas had sent with his apology, setting up Jamie's future without asking for anything back. The one that said he saw her, really saw her, when he thought she had nothing. "Can I tell you something?" Nina said. "Always. I knew. That day you sent the scholarship, I knew it wasn't just about Jamie. I knew you were trying to fix what you'd broken. And I could have stayed angry, could have sent it back. But I didn't want to, because underneath all the money and the complications, you were just a person who'd made a mistake and was trying to make it right, and that felt worth giving a chance to." Lucas pulled her closer. "Best decision you ever made." "Second best. First was throwing away your father's check." "Fair point." They finished their wine and eventually made it to the bed they'd assembled wrong, so it was slightly crooked. But it was comfortable. It was theirs. In the morning, Nina woke to Jamie and Evan arguing about breakfast. Lucas was already up, trying to negotiate peace between pancakes and waffles. She lay there for a moment, listening to her family, and felt grateful. For the struggle that had taught her strength. For the kindness she'd given that had come back to her multiplied. For the courage to choose love even when it was scary. She got up and joined them in the kitchen. Lucas handed her coffee, terrible coffee from the machine they hadn't figured out yet. And she drank it anyway because it was made with love. "What's the plan for today?" Evan asked. "Unpack boxes," Lucas said. "Finish setting up rooms," Nina added. "Maybe order pizza because I guarantee we won't find the cooking stuff," Lucas said. Jamie grinned. "Best moving day ever." And Nina looked around at her family in their new house with its unpacked boxes and its crooked bed and its terrible coffee and thought, yeah, it really is. Years later, when people asked how they met, Nina would tell them the truth. That she was a barista and he was a billionaire pretending not to be. that he'd been stood up on his birthday and she'd brought him cake, that they'd almost not made it past the lies and the money and the gap between their worlds. That love wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone real and choosing them anyway, every day, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. Because the truth was, there was no fairy tale ending, just people figuring it out. Lucas still overthought everything. Nina still struggled with accepting help. The kids still fought. Money was still weird sometimes. Richard was still difficult. Life was still life. But they had each other. They had mornings in the kitchen, arguing about breakfast, and evenings on the couch, watching movies, and nights where they talked until they fell asleep mid-sentence. They had the ordinary, extraordinary gift of being seen and choosing to see in return. And on Lucas's birthday every year, Nina made him blow out a candle on a slice of chocolate cake. Because some traditions were worth keeping. Because she never wanted him to forget that everyone deserves kindness, especially on their birthday, especially when they think no one's watching. And every year, Lucas would close his eyes and make the same wish he'd stopped making that first night when she'd brought him cake. Because he didn't need to wish anymore. He had everything that mattered. He had her, he had them, he had home. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything.